Hi, welcome back to Clinical Veterinary Recruiting Insights. I'm your host, Brad McMillan, and I'm joined here by Dr. William Singleton. And today we're going to discuss a little bit of his career background in a variety of settings, as well as his journey into consulting. So, yeah, thank you for joining me, Dr. Singleton.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk to people about what I do and why I do it and what I hope to accomplish from it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So let's, starting from early with Texas Biomedical Research Institute. Now, was
Mhm.
that at that time associated with the Southwest Primate Center?
It was. Yeah.
Okay. So we go from there up to pharmaceutical organization, two of them, then large academic institution, then doing consulting, and now with CRO. So you've been a few different places to say the least over what is it, 30 plus years?
I don't do the math anymore. Um, yeah. So it's probably about 30 plus years. Yeah.
Nice, nice.
hmm
So yeah, how'd you get into lab animal medicine? One day you weren't, one day you decided to. So was that in vet school you decided to, or tell me more about that?
Yeah. So it actually started before vet school. I was always interested in becoming a vet. Probably by the time I was like 10, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And
Okay.
as a kid, we had pets in the house. We lived in the city, but we had like hamsters and gerbils and rabbits and fish and dogs and cats and stuff. So I always had this affinity for animals. I read a lot about different veterinarians and like James Roast, Harriet series were really popular for me and other veterinary series. So I had this natural inclination to want to be a veterinarian. During undergrad, I had a job working at NIH. I was working in a lab, um, just doing like basic benchtop work, just because there was a posting on the wall. I needed a job, and so I took it. But I had no concept at that point that research involved animals. I mean, it was really just kind of like a new thing to me. One day I'm walking down the hall, just kind of had a break, and I smell something. I'm like, oh, that smells like rodents because I'm used to raising them, you know. So
Right, right.
walk down the hall, I walk into a room and there's like rats in this room, there are mice in this room, and I'm thinking, first of all, the door should be closed, and second of all, like, who's taking care of these animals? And so I asked around, talked to some folks who I work with, and they said, yeah, the NIH has a big veterinary medicine component to what we do, and I got introduced to a couple lab animal vets really early on, and they were like, yeah, this is a really vibrant part of the veterinary community. And I was in. I mean, I saw what they were doing. I saw like I believed in research, of course, and I saw the care they were providing to animals. And I thought, well, how can I get involved in this? And I think that started my journey to like figuring out like when I get into vet school. Because at that point, I had not been and gotten into vet school. If I should get into vet school, I want to pursue a career in lab animal medicine.
Nice, nice. So you're getting into lab animal medicine. You're sort of figuring it out. But when you look back at your career now, not titles or roles, but what do you think you were chasing early on?
That's a good question. I think I wanted to be helpful to animals. You know, I think I naturally had this desire to be helpful. And I felt like as a vet, it would be a great opportunity to help animals, just keeping them healthy. And I think that that pursuit moved into lab animal medicine as well. I mean, I wanted them, if they're going to be used in research, like how can I make sure that these guys are healthy, the care is good, appropriate for what they're doing, and just making sure that the model is working.
Right. So was there a, early moment, maybe at Texas Biomedical or maybe your first industry role where you realized this career was going to be more about just being a good veterinarian?
Yeah, and a couple things happened, and around the same time frame. So completely independent of my work, I was working with I was at a church, and I was just going, like my mom says, "Did you go to church this weekend?" Like, yeah, I did. And someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, look, our the person who's running our youth group is leaving. Would you be willing to do it?" Never thought of it before. And I said, yeah. So the thing that made it work for me and the connection was doing that. I thought, how can I do something different for these kids? I mean, they don't want to be in church for the most part. They're just doing it because their parents brought them here and they have to do it. So how can I make this experience worthwhile to them and feel like they're getting something out of it? And so week
Right.
after week, I was developing these programs for them, and more kids were coming, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, it's like, how do I slow it down to make it more meaningful for them? And at the same time, I was getting some opportunities at work to do some training, like lab animal training courses for my staff. And so during the same time, I'm like thinking, how do I slow it down to make it more applicable for them? And I remember having a call with a colleague of mine thinking about like, I'm not sure if I want to do clinical medicine for my whole career. I think I might want to get into something else. And she was like, I want to do clinical medicine for the rest of my career. You do your thing, I'll do mine. We'll still be buddies. And it was like this inflection point where I recognized like maybe my career is not going to be like a hard, true clinical veterinarian, but it's going to involve more than just animals, but maybe something about people and helping people do good work.
No, that's great. So you kind of had an indication early on to sort of look for those other things, or just had that gut feeling.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think what it helped for me was that it made people see me a little differently. Like, so not only are you providing great care to my animal, but you're helping me understand how that care works, or you're showing me some things that I hadn't been shown before. And
Oh,
yes,
fantastic.
it made me see people a little bit differently.
Sure, sure. Well, and you're there to guide and be the evangelist for the animals, but along that comes the proper training of the support staff. A
Mm,
lot of the support staff are touching animals on a higher percentage than some of the veterinarians. Some of the
mm,
techs and husbandry staff and people with enrichment. So training them is significantly important as far as the impact to animal health, welfare, and well being.
yeah. Yeah, so I think all that stuff started like kind of like coming together for me. Like it's not just the veterinarian taking care of the animal, but it's the technician, it's the histotech, it's the administrative office, it's all these kind of components that are making the system really work.
Sure.
Um, and so, how can I pay attention to all those things to ensure that at the very end of it, this animal's getting great care?
No, that's fantastic. So we're walking through your career, and you were leading the youth group, and then blending it in with the training for animal care programs. And you've said that leadership became that most important competency. Was it during that leadership, that youth organization? Was it during that first stint at Texas Biomed? Like when did that leadership aspect really click for you? And was there a difference between mentorship and leadership, or do they blend together?
I think early on was it was a little bit of more mentorship and just kind of like talking with people, like kind of coaching them on the side. It wasn't until I went to the pharmaceutical company Rome Polanc Roar after leaving uh, Texas Biomed or Southwest Foundation that I was in a true leadership role. My first job, I was a clinical vet, just kind of doing
Right.
what I do. And so I think I had a vet tech who reported to me, which was fine, which is great. I needed that because my vet tech really taught me a whole lot. But it wasn't until I moved into working in pharma initially that I had like a leadership title. Um, and that's when the ideas around leadership started sinking. I would definitely say like as I was learning, I wasn't like I didn't have it all figured out. It was just like an iterative process. But more and more, I realize like what's really driving your success right now is how you are leading this group, whether it's the vet team, your animal care staff, um, your other support personnel. How are you making sure that like they're ready for this opportunity? How are you making sure that you're communicating effectively and appropriately with them, and still doing good medicine?
Sure. And so you stepped into the roles and responsibilities for large programs and teams. What
Mhm.
turned out to be harder than you expected? The science, the people, the animals, or the politics?
Yeah. So probably. Well, so I mean, it depends on the stage, but I would say politics, probably politics, bureaucracy. Um, I just kind of grew up thinking like life should be linear, like this is what you should do. This is what the problem is. This is a solution moving forward. And in big complex organizations, it's not always like that way. You know, it
Right.
might be clear, like, but you might have to talk to some other people. You might have to get more stakeholders involved before you can make that straight path. And so learning that has been a challenge. Just how do you make sure like when you're dealing with like bigger issues, all your stakeholders are involved in those conversations. I think there
Sure.
are components of the other pieces in medicine. I mean, medicine is always changing. There's new technologies, new models that have to be learned. I think that science is similar. Um, but between people, managing people's expectations, helping sure that they are clear on their expectations and are trained appropriately, and bureaucracy from the perspective of there are lots of components necessary for making sometimes good decisions, and you have to like kind of like manage all of that if you really want to get a good decision and do good work.
Sure, sure. Now you've got a long career. You've had a lot of experience. What was a better experiential teacher for you? Successes or failures slash opportunities?
Yeah, probably both. I think that just kind of like sometimes when you make a bad decision or something happens where you don't think it's going to. I mean, so working at Texas Biomed, I wanted to stay there. I thought that was going to be a great job for me. But my manager, well, he was kind of my manager, my mentor, suggested like you need to go and get more exposure. And that was tough for me to hear because I really liked it. The environment was great, but he was right. I mean, I wanted to be a lab animal veterinarian, and really, I was really focusing all of my efforts on primate medicine. And so he suggested, you need to change. You need to move somewhere else. And so I don't know if that was a failure per se, but it was like a change that I had to make that kind of like made me realize like sometimes things don't always go like you want them to. But I was very fortunate to get a good job, and I had another manager who was amazing in terms of leading me and giving me the opportunity to get my boards. Um, so that was good. And then that company moved to New Jersey. I'm a kid from Philly. The idea of moving to New Jersey was like, kind of like, why are you going to do that? Like, who wants to live in New Jersey? And I have lots of wonderful people who I know who live in New Jersey. So, but at the time, I was like, I just can't see myself moving to New Jersey. And I'm like, I'll find some other opportunity. So I said no to that opportunity. Whether it was a good decision or bad decision, it was a decision I made at the time. Um, I would have been fine if I moved to New Jersey. I think it would have been great kind of having that continuity of moving to another company, moving to another location, but it worked out that I didn't. So I don't necessarily say it as a failure, but it was a decision that I made. It was a hard decision, and I had to learn from that because I had a 6-month period where I wasn't working because I was trying to find another job.
Sure.
Um, so, but I was able to like pivot eventually and get my job at University of Penn from that. So I I think it wasn't a failure again, but I think it was an opportunity, like a decision you made provided a little bit of stress. Like it made a little bit challenging situation for you. Um, but it turned out to be a great opportunity for me. So
Well,
I think.
I just have to say, I mean, personally, with my endeavors, I would have to say, one thing that has been helpful is, becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. And you get
Mhm.
uncomfortable in those situations where you stretch, you try, something works, something's, iterative. But I think that learning is very iterative in management, in business, and being a business owner. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. I think that it's great when you have periods of time when everything's good. Things are moving along, family's good, work's good, business is going well. Your dog is, doing what it's supposed to do. I mean, but I think that in reality, the more you live, the more you realize like there is going to be a certain level of uncertainty every single day. Like, and so how do you wake up and like embrace that? Like
Right.
you don't want it to. You want it to be smooth, and you're gonna do everything you can to make sure that things go well. But every now and then something's gonna hit you. And so how are you gonna respond to that? Are you going to like fall down, or are you gonna be like, you know what? I knew something was gonna come eventually. It's all good. We'll figure it out.
Right, right, right. Well, and just kind of switching gears a little bit. I mean, you've mentored many veterinarians over the years. You've seen a variety of career trajectories, where some of them started, where they are now. What do you think separated the ones who truly thrived in leadership from those who struggled, even if they were technically excellent? Just so
Mhm.
pure leadership, mentoring there.
I think it's kind of varied. I mean, I think a lot of the folks that I've met with have done really well and mentored have done well. But I think you got to bring a little bit of humility to the role. You know, as veterinarians, we're often moved into organizations where, because of our title as a veterinarian or attending veterinarian, there is a certain amount of leadership and responsibility and privilege that's given to us. How are you going to manage that? You know, how are you going to stay humble to the opportunity and stay open to learning? And I think those vets who are quick to ask questions, quick to listen, quick to be open to other ways of thinking tend to do very well. I think those who don't, for any number of reasons, they might struggle a little bit more before it kind of clicks. Like, oh, you know what? Maybe I might need to kind of like soften this approach, or maybe I need to open up my attention span to something that I haven't been paying attention to before.
Sure.
But I think they're to bring in this humility and this sense of we have to do this together. I'm not going to be that sage on the stage who's going to like answer every question and solve every problem, but I'm going to do this in a community.
Sure. Okay. If just once again looking back over your history, was there ever one, major decision that you can think of that you may not necessarily change it now, but maybe have looked at it or approached it, differently now with the lens of experience?
Um, yeah, probably a few. I think starting my own consultancy business, I had such passion for it. I thought like, oh, this is great. And I did what a lot of people do. I got a business plan together. I had 10, 20 pages of like stuff that was gonna like be amazing. And I did not reach out to as many people as I probably should have, in
Hmm.
terms of like starting a business, some advice. Because I think, I had a little bit of that, I don't know if it was arrogance, but like, "This is my great idea, and I'm good with it." But I think in starting a business, it's a big deal, and being successful at it. And I think there is some advice that I would have probably been well served to take early on. Um, Maybe it's scale, maybe kinda like focus, maybe even a little bit of development, like, maybe I could have, like, maybe taken a couple more classes in, like, business development or business, just to have some basic understanding of what it means to start a business, because that's really important. I mean, I had this technical thing that I was really confident
Right.
about, but
Right.
starting a business, it's completely different. Getting a bank account, doing all that legal stuff, and then getting clients, marketing and advertising, that wasn't part of my training at all.
Well, it's interesting in that, as a business owner, we're really good at driving the car, right? But you've got to keep feeding that engine. So, you could have an amazing engine with no gas that
Mhm.
goes nowhere, or you've
No,
got all
mhm.
this gas and not enough engine to push everything.
Right.
So, trying to find that balance and continually run into the front, the front and the back of the machine to tie it up, and that takes that takes some time. So you're saying that, when starting your consultancy, maybe wish you would have talked to a few more people, or looked at a few different things.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so I think that, well, one of the things I'm learning now is, like, you can't go through life alone. As great as you are, as good as you are at what you do, like, you probably need a little help somewhere. And so, I mean, maybe that's the bigger learning is that even when you're early in your career, getting a mentor, a coach, someone who you can regularly check in with, and it might not be like every week or month or whatever, but someone who is looking out for your best interest. And you have their ear, they have your ear, and you're willing to kind of like take some of that advice. Because I think a lot of times it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel. Um, but we can often do it even in the smallest senses because we just either don't know or we like learning is my best experience. I just need to go through it. Like maybe that's not always true. And having
Right.
someone who can kind of who you can hear and say, you know what? I understand what you're going, but if you make a little shift or do this, it just might make your experience that much better.
Right, right. I've found that similar, where I will get very excited about something and talking with some of my mentors and, "Hey, that's a really good idea, but tone it down and approach
Mhm,
it this way." Love your
mhm,
energy, but, you gotta
mhm.
you gotta have somebody from a mentorship perspective that is gonna be comfortable telling you the baby's ugly, right? You don't need that yes person. Like, somebody's gotta put you on the right track. And it
Yeah,
can't just be
yeah, yeah.
platitudes, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times, if you don't have that working relationship, the baby's gonna be beautiful. That's the
Yep,
most gorgeous baby I've ever seen. I hate to use that
right.
analogy, but but I get it. But so you need someone who can, lovingly and honestly tell you the honest truth about where you are and where you wanna go. Question.
So, yeah, so what do you think pulled you towards advisory and consulting work?
So, when I first started Axe, it was very technical. Providing a training course, usually hands-on training of some sort. Technical, like bleeding an animal, anesthesia, restraint, things of that nature. Um, I got an opportunity to do some like straight veterinary work because people were like, "Hey, can you help us out? We're looking for," it." And I had some time, so I did it.
Right,
Um, and also like some of the programs we worked with, like started having challenges around like process, um, and organization. And so it made us kinda have different conversations. I mean, so if we're doing a training on, like, technique, like a basic tech we wanna train our people to do tail vein injections. Pretty straightforward. But if I have a conversation with someone about, like, our staff aren't performing at the level that we expect them to, so we thought we would work on building out their SOPs to improve, like, kind of what the expectation is. It forces a different conversation because it's not so much always so cut and dry, like, is it that they're not following instructions, or is there some other reason why they're not performing well? And I think having those conversations on a more regular basis kind of started moving some of our work into those spaces where we're asking questions that we didn't ask when we were talking about tail vein cannulation. We were asking questions about the organization. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about like, how are you promoting people? How are you training people? Not just the specific, but the overall approach to training. And and it, the more we had those conversations kind of went from having it with the manager to the associate director to the director to like higher levels in the organization. Because we're talking like it's like we're kind of like going up in the organization trying to fix what's down here. And so it was a gradual thing. I don't know that it was like necessarily by design. It wasn't in my business model initially. My business model was all about training. But it just kind of like merged into something a little bit more and maybe something a little bit more richer for organizations.
Sure, sure. So within that, kind of, part two there was what problem did you feel wasn't necessarily being addressed in traditional leadership roles? So in traditional roles that you were in, what was kind of that itch that needed to get scratched? What was some of the benefit or the feeling that you got from from the consulting? Was it the project nature? Was it you could clearly see movement from one step to the next? I'm just curious.
hmm I mean, from the project perspective, I think that was fine. I mean, I think when you have a project, you just implement the project. You have a plan, your strategy, you work your strategy. From a leadership perspective, I think one of the biggest gaps I saw and early on was in most roles, you're not taught how to be a leader. You're taught how to be technically competent. You're taught how to be technically proficient. Um, and leadership is so nuanced. And if how do I talk to someone about an issue they're having, um, whose English is a second language for them, or I don't like them, or or any number of things like, or how do I design a
Mhm.
training curriculum that is effective for everyone? I mean, I think there's lots of leadership things that are really important that we just don't get taught. Even as a veterinarian, I mean, we talk a lot about like as vets, kind of like we don't get taught about practice management. We have like a class like every Friday afternoon at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on practice management. that's the biggest part of your business is like, how do I manage my practice if you're in small animal practice? Same with any veterinarian, whether you're in lab animal medicine or private practice. Like, how do I lead people? Because at the end of the day, it's always about people. Whether it's your staff, it's your PIs that you're communicating with, maybe it's your manager, the person you report to. How do I effectively navigate those relationships? And one of the other things that we saw a lot of, particularly non-veterinarians, non-professional track, was folks that were really technically competent moved into the supervisory advisory roles and didn't have any of that basic training,
And
communication skills, project management skills, coaching, developing people.
sure, sure, sure. And that can certainly create a challenge. So from the day that you had your business plan, you had this 20-page, beautiful, laid out
Mhm.
prospectus here, to now. So was consulting what you thought it would be from when you had that business plan?
No, no. And I would say it's better for me, but it wasn't. I love it because it allows me to engage with people at a level that I hadn't been able to before. Um, my business plan was great, and I think it's still great in terms of what we do as an organization. But in terms of me personally, consulting advisory work is really where I found my kind of my spot. You know.
Nice, nice. So when organizations reach out to you now,
Mhm.
what are they usually struggling with? And even if that's not how they initially describe it, so they may describe three different scenarios, from three different clients, but it ends up, falling into the same vein. Do you see that? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think operational efficiency is probably the thing that most organizations are interested in. Whether they're trying to be more fiscally responsible, and maybe they're wanting their folks to be a little bit more um, attentive to detail. Maybe they're in going through like a downsize. Maybe their organization has to do some restructuring. So, how do I get my operations to still do the thing that it needs to do, but with all these challenges and complexities that are happening?
Right, right, right. So moving towards the future, how do you want your, advisory work to evolve over the next few years? So maybe not necessarily in volume, but in impact. Or have you reached that, or just depends on what comes down the pike?
Yeah, no, it can't be dependent on what comes down the pike. That kind of like, I get it. Sometimes you got to do that, but then it forces me to lose focus. Like then I'll just like kind of do whatever. I think leveraging the experience that I've had with basic clinical care, building out organizations, assisting programs to get regulatory compliant, and all those things really lends itself to my advisory work going in the future of helping those organizations that are really interested in making that big step. Like, how do I become more efficient? How do I become more operationally sound? How do I get my staff of employees, whether they're technicians, veterinarians, to operate at a level where there is excellence across the board, excellence in clinical care, excellence in communication with our research teams, our regulatory compliance is strong, and we're making a difference in the lives of people around the world. That's kind of the focus where I want to kind of move to. Um, Certainly still happy to support those other things through acts, but I think that for me, how do I have those conversations at level where I'm talking to your higher level folks about this is your organization, this is what I see your organization needs. Let me help you get there. Let me work beside you to get there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So for veterinarians that want to move into leadership or advanced advisory roles, what do you think they need to do start doing earlier in their careers to be able to prepare them for this path?
Um, so if you asked me that like 10 years ago, I'm like, don't do it. It's my job. I'm like, don't take my job away from me. Um, but there's so much opportunity. I think yeah, I think that for vets who are interested in this type of work, I think be risky, be honest, don't stop learning, don't stop listening, and use your voice as much as you can, but use your ears more. Like what what am I hearing? What am I seeing? How can I incorporate my knowledge as a veterinarian, with a lot of exposure to help someone get into a space that they're struggling with, whether it's a researcher, someone trying to write a grant, someone trying to develop a new study model, animal model. How can I leverage all that I know to help them? And I think the biggest challenge is like hear what they have to say, like listen to them. Don't assume anything. Listen, and then leverage your expertise to be of help.
Sure, sure. So I talk with a number of lab animal veterinarians on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and I come across individuals that hey, I'd be open to something on the side, maybe some Aya cook work or some SOP rewriting. Is
Mhm.
there anything else that somebody who might eventually want to work as that consultant that they should consider taking on, that they should strive towards, that they should, make as sort of a stretch goal to push them out there? What do you think could prepare somebody for eventually evolving into that, consultancy role from a
I mean, those.
veterinary experience or lab animal experiential perspective?
I think what you mentioned are great. I mean, like assisting with SOPs, regulatory support, reviewing protocols, all those things are fine. Um, Even like small organization looking for an attending veterinarian. Maybe they don't need someone on site every month, but maybe like 6 months or 6 times or a year or something. Where they're having an opportunity to go into another organization. I think the challenge is for them to look for opportunities to engage beyond your engagement, if that makes sense. So you can do SOP writing and you could be an SOP writer, and that's totally fine. You can review protocols and just review protocols, and that's totally fine. But what's in the spaces between them where as a veterinarian, as someone else, where you can say, like, you know what, maybe I can help if I wrote this SOP for you, but it looks like there's a gap here. How can I have that conversation with you to kind of show up that gap? Whether it's an SOP, a protocol, like leveraging what you know to reach out, be of service, like ask bigger questions. Don't just use it as a checkbox, like, oh, I'm doing SOP reviews, that's what I'm doing, or I'm doing protocol reviews, that's what I'm doing. Like, if you really want to kind of reach out and do more, you've got to let people see that you can do more. You know?
And take that step for sure. I mean, in our recruiting conversations that we have with individuals, and we look through resumes and have conversations, but what we usually end up diving deeper into is what did you do beyond the scope of your normal role?
Mhm.
That's what we want to try and present a candidate to a hiring team, somebody that's got a project or a problem.
Mhm.
What problems did you solve aside
Mhm.
from your job
Mhm.
description,
Mhm.
and what was the impact of that? So it sounds like you're saying similarly, if you're doing some of these smaller consulting gigs, where else did you identify problems? What was your impact, and what was the method?
Yeah. Yeah, and interesting though, Brad. I think even for vets who are in a job, full time job, this is what they're doing. It's the same, I think, because I think like you have a job description. These are the things you're supposed to do, but what are you doing in between those things? How are you engaging your team? How are you building? Maybe the retention rate is like less because you're what you're doing with your organization. Like pay attention to those things. Like when you're walking down the hall and people are talking to you and engaging with you in a way that's meaningful and people are doing good work because of your presence, because of what you bring to the organization. Like those are like really important things. And I think sometimes we don't promote them, but I think like if you're that person who's all about like developing a strong team, coordinating good activity, um, making sure your folks are technically sound when they're going into different responsibilities, that's really important.
And professionally, what I would say is, try and document those, because those can go, in your mind and
Hmm.
out pretty quickly. But those can be, big impacts that other potential companies or employers might be looking for where you added value. So,
Mhm.
keep sort of a professional journal of some of those accomplishments. And, that's why I've got, the Keystone resume system out there, to talk through some of that. But, as we're wrapping up here, so I got a legacy question for you. When people look back on the programs that you've led or advised, what do you hope they say that you changed culturally, not just structurally?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the easy answer, and maybe might need to be explored a little bit, is William helped us see that we could be better, and William helped us get there. I think that for me, when you talk about culture, and I mean, to me, it's culture's everything. And so if I can go to an organization that's kind of leaning forward, that wants to kind of like get better, and give them the tools, maybe ask a question or two to kind of like turn something on in their head, and then work with them, partner with them to like really help them create that culture that thrives on excellence. It thrives on regulatory compliance. It thrives on like solid animal care and welfare. And that really looks at the person and the value of the person. I think that's great. And maybe even I don't have to do it all. Maybe just sometimes I just like give them a word, or two, or a suggestion, or maybe like a motivational kind of like thing, like, "Hey, you guys can do it. You're already there. You just need to switch, and you're good." And to me, that's brilliant. I mean, like I don't need accolades. I just want you to be good. I want you to see your potential, and particularly as leaders, I want you to see your potential, but I want you to see the potential in your people, because
Sure.
your success is really about what they do, and what they do is really about how you lead them. So how do you do in a way that's really going to bring out the best in them so that your organization thrives?
No, that's fantastic. So if there are, veterinarians that are, interested in progressing onto this side, or if there are organizations that could be interested in services like yours, how do people get in contact with you?
um that's a good question. Call my mom. She's got 24/7 access to me. Yeah, I mean, through typical channels, LinkedIn, email, phone call. I'm pretty open to any mechanism for people to reach out to me, but I'm
and
fairly
what's your
active
web
on LinkedIn.
and what's your website again?
It's William at axetraining.com.
Okay. Okay. So axetraining.com is the website where people can
Yep.
go to find out more details.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us today, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Brad. The pleasure's been mine. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Have a great one.
You too.